Have you ever ignored a software update? Maybe saying, I'll do it later, or I really don't feel like restarting my machine right now. Well, imagine that decision on a massive scale. In 2017, Equifax had one of the largest data breaches in history. Names, social security numbers, home addresses. And what makes it even worse, the solution was already there. They just didn't apply it.
Equifax discovered it was hacked in July, but only went public last week. Sensitive data like birth dates, social security, and driver's license numbers were compromised.
So who is Equifax? They are one of the 3 major credit bureaus in the United States. They track financial information like credit cards, loans, and payment history. And that information helps determine your credit score. So anytime you apply for a credit card or a loan, even a mortgage, there's a good chance your credit is being checked through a company like Equifax, which means they are responsible for holding a very large amount of sensitive information. And because of their role, they're holding on to what you would call the crown jewels of identity data, which means if that data gets exposed, the impact is not just short term, it can be widespread. The attackers exploited a vulnerability in a tool called Apache Struts. Apache Struts is a framework developers use to build web applications, basically helping websites handle things like user requests and data behind the scenes. Once the vulnerability was discovered, a patch was released to fix it. So any organization using that software had the ability to update and protect their systems. Now, a vulnerability is simply a weakness in a system, something attackers can take advantage of. You can think of it like this. It's like leaving your front door unlocked at night. Everything inside is still there, but the protection is gone. And anyone walking by only needs to check the handle. And in the digital world, this can look like a few different things. Running outdated software where a known issue wasn't patched, or using weak or reused passwords that can be guessed or exposed easily, using password cracking tools. Most of the time, it's not something dramatic, just small gaps that were never fully secured. And in this case, that gap was left open. Attackers scanned the internet for systems that were still exposed. They found Equifax and they got in. From there, they had access for months, quietly collecting a large amount of data without being detected. In cybersecurity, this term is known as dwell time, the amount of time an attacker stays inside a system without being detected. It would be like someone living in your attic, watching everything, learning your routine, and only coming down when you're not at home. And I'm sorry, that's a pretty disturbing mental image. But that is essentially what is happening during dwell time. And in this case, that went on for months. No alarms, no shutdown, just a very slow and steady data exfiltration. How did Equifax respond? Well, after discovering the breach, Equifax took the affected systems offline and began an internal investigation. They also brought in cybersecurity experts to help understand what happened and contain the damage. Over time, they implemented stronger security measures, including better patch management and monitoring, basically trying to close the gaps that were exposed. But by then, the damage was already done. In 2019, Equifax agreed to a settlement of up to $700 million. That money would go to things like free credit monitoring for 10 years, identity protection, and financial compensation for those affected. Because when data like this is exposed, it's not something you can just reset. You can change a password, but you can't change your social security number. And what happened to the attackers? In February 2020, the US Department of Justice charged 4 individuals linked to China's military in connection with the breach. They were accused of things like computer fraud and economic espionage. However, no arrests were ever made. And while accountability can be complicated in cases like this, the bigger takeaway is what we can learn from it. Security isn't set it and forget it.
Set it and forget it.
It doesn't work like that. I mean, it would be nice, but maybe not, because cybersecurity, there would be no work. Systems need constant attention, updates, they need monitoring and maintenance. And that applies to both companies and even to us personally. Now, when it comes to updates, a lot of people hesitate. I mean, you might be wondering, should I always update everything? My phone, apps, software? Because we've also heard of updates causing problems, right? And that's a fair question. Updates aren't perfect. Sometimes they can cause bugs or issues. But most of the time, they are fixing security problems that already exist. In other words, they're closing doors that attackers already know about. In this case, the issue wasn't the update itself. It was that the patch wasn't applied. And this wasn't some unknown attack. This was a known door left open. So what should we do? It would be wise to keep our devices and apps updated, especially when it comes to security updates. We don't have to rush every single update immediately, but ignoring them for long periods of time can leave us exposed. Whether it's a business managing thousands of systems or just us keeping our phones and apps updated, security is something that has to be maintained over time. Because the moment we stop paying attention, that's when things can start to slip. And that's the bigger lesson here. Small oversights can lead to severe consequences. The Equifax breach comes down to something simple. It was a known issue, a fix that was already available, and a door that never got closed. Something that could have been avoided. Now let me ask you, what cybersecurity incident should we cover next? Please let me know in the comments. And if you're into this kind of breakdown, please consider subscribing for more.